Hi, everyone, and welcome to Titans Together, a comic book retrospective video podcast. I am Joe Pride, and as always, with me is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Geeky JP.
And with us today is Ryan O'Connor of the I'd Like a Refund podcast. Welcome to Titans Together, Ryan.
Thank you both so much for having me. I finally have an avenue to flex some of my comic knowledge. Not as much as you two in this realm, but in terms of what I typically talk about, this is going to be a fun little break for me to talk some fun comic things.
Yeah, I mean, we're not reviewing any of the Teen Titans video media that is out there.
Boy, could we though.
We could, because there's some of them
most of it, honestly.
Most of it. I think the animated series kind of outweighs the like three other animated things of the Teen Titans, but yeah, I digress.
I mean, if you count like all of like the young team DC animated things, then obviously we have Young Justice, which is really good. But if you don't count that one, then it's not looking too great for the Titans in terms of television right now.
Let's not bring up. We always end up bringing up the HBO Max show, and I always take.
I could talk about that for hours. I still haven't bothered to start season 3 yet, and it's almost done. So
we need to do. I still want to do a live react episode where I get drunk and watch that show and just be angry.
Hell yes.
And preface every beginning of it with like, I'm gonna be angry and I'm gonna be shady.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
No, I would not only would I need to see that, I will be here in person in your home to watch that happen.
So we are actually covering volume 8 of the Teen Titans books. James, you want to throw out our dates for us this time around?
I've got December 1984 through October 1985. We have Tales of the New Teen Titans 49 through 58. It's a clean sweep. No annuals or anything fancy.
Yeah, they jam-packed the last 10 issues into this volume, and it is hefty. Ryan, you joined us at like the cumulatively like the most Teen Titans comics that we've covered so far on the podcast, which is cool. Welcome to, I mean, you're just jumping right into the deep end.
Yeah, I had a massive homework assignment for this one. It's like almost like extra credit was given to me as well. Like, you do this extra assignment too, which is what it felt like reading the last couple of issues. All good in certain aspects, but it was certainly a lot. That's for sure.
And this will actually conclude the initial Marv Wolfman and George Perez run just before they relaunched the title, I think in the wake of Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that is teased at the end of this volume. But let's jump right in. We are on issue 49. We're just coming off of the Judas contract. It kind of starts a little mundane, I would say, because we open with Dick Grayson's tux fitting with the rest of the groomsmen for Terry and Donna's wedding. Now, you were jumping in right in the middle towards the end of this wedding prep, but me and James have been... Yeah. I feel like I'm getting married alongside Donna Troy because...
Been there the whole time.
From the contemplation of her choosing to marry Terry to the where we're at here, the tux fitting. James, no, don't do that. Okay, before we get into it, Ryan, I have to know what you think of Terry overall. It's going to be a running theme for us.
Okay.
For his character.
So, like I said, I don't know as much about the Titans lore as you two, obviously, and Terry Long is not really a character that I know that much about. I actually didn't even know that him marrying Donna Troy was a thing until I opened up on this page. I was like, who is this guy? who is this? I gotta be honest, like he's not really a main character in this issue once you get past the wedding. But I think because I don't find him that interesting, I will say just right out the gate, like issue 49 was probably the least interesting issue that we had of this group. And it's not really his fault per se. Like, I know there's a big Wally subplot going on in this one as well, which I'm sure we'll get to him. I know you have strong feelings about Wally in this run. But yeah, I don't really find him that compelling. I don't really get the romance he has with Donna. They don't really show a lot of it. I think the next issue is where we get the meat of their romance, which is at the wedding, which is funny that it's like we don't really see any romance until they're actually getting married.
Yeah, like, exactly. This is more of the like procedural stuff of a wedding, which like I don't like the idea of myself getting married, so I'm like, I hate all of
Yeah,
this.
it's all
This is
this. It's just all standard shit that you
Yeah.
always do. Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's one of those things like when you're doing it for yourself, like I'm sure it's stressful and maybe enthralling at times, but when you're watching other people do it, it's just kind of boring.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I
That's how I
mean,
feel.
I don't know. I was participating and hosting a wedding, I guess, sort of. I helped.
You were just
this
there,
weekend.
yeah.
And I would say we wanted to murder each other several times, and that's why this is an inaccurate representation. Like,
I would very much be like Beast Boy in this instance
Yeah.
of trying to plan the wedding. Like somebody would have to send me to go take a nap because I would just succumb to anxiety. This is
Yeah.
just too much.
He was on fire during these during all this stuff with the wedding. Like that was a side of Beast Boy I'm not that familiar with, and I was like, well, he's the wedding planner. Like, okay, sure.
So
do that.
previously on
Right.
Titans Together, the last volume, he offered to have the Dayton Estate the host of their wedding,
Mhm.
and I thought that was like all he was gonna do. 'Cause
Right,
They never really
exactly.
explicitly say like, no, Beast Boy is gonna be the wedding planner.
Yeah, that's not stated like at all. It shows up day of, and it's like, oh, he's running the show. Like that was
Yeah.
very surprising.
Just is. Our first actual Titan trope is right out the gate in this issue. It is the Titan cameo. The lovely Lilith is joining us for the majority of this volume, which I love because, as James knows, I have a vast, unnecessarily large backlog history with the Teen Titans characters that are often overlooked and often not seen unless they're either getting killed off or, in this case, a bridesmaid in a wedding. So
I immediately was Googling Teen Titans Lilith.
Yep. Yep. Totally get that.
I personally love Lilith, so I'm very glad to see her here. And whereas Raven is kind of missing for a larger half of the first half of this volume, Lilith, I feel, was a good substitute. She's great, in my opinion. And we'll get more of her as we go on, more history. And she ends up joining the team for the first couple issues of this. But she is one of Donna's bridesmaids, along with Sharon, I think was her name.
Sharon, yeah.
The one who's just man crazy.
Yes, yeah. She's just trying to get down. That's all Sharon wants to do.
Which, like, good for her, girl. I
Yeah.
mean, it was cool to see for the 80s, like, idea of what like feminism is back then, that
Mhm.
like I feel like they kind of covered a large array of different types of women, so it wasn't like just one type of woman on this bridesmaids.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the men in these issues didn't do a great thing for women, so so it's nice to have a strong female character, even if she's only there briefly.
So many men's are gross in this volume.
Yeah, I was noticing that right away. Like a lot of like we're going to talk to like specifically in this issue. And I know we're still going to get to it, like Dr. Light being one of them. It's like, oh man, like you can't write that stuff anymore.
No, and it's strange. Well, I mean, I guess it's easy to pull from that, like what he ends up being more towards, like when I was reading comic books of who he is, like Identity Crisis era, Dr. Light, like a lot of that stuff actually wasn't really out of nowhere because the way he's written here, it seems very apropos, regardless of how freaking gross it is. Sharon is tasked with contacting Wally, who apparently has moved full on to Central City. And this is where the latter half of this issue takes place, and it kind of focuses entirely on Wally and Francis Kane. Sidebar, Francis Kane continues to be a highlight of all of the Wally adventures. And when she was like, oh, I'm just going to magnetically drive us around in this car, I'm like, yes. I don't ever see superheroes using their powers for like the weirdest things.
Or
So
just like day-to-day stuff. Yeah, you don't see it.
She's actually like more of a caregiver for Wally throughout most of this issue because in Wally's words, he's dying. Something to do with his genes and the way that they affected with how he came to be a speedster is killing him. All the meanwhile, Dr. Light decides to show up again after literally just quitting. Like last volume, didn't he quit? Or was that 2 volumes ago, James?
Yeah, I think Wally was last volume. Dr. Light was 2.
Was it 2 volumes ago? So we got a nice break until he shows up here with some strange new powers all of a sudden, talking about how he loves Central City and that he is glad to be a supervillain again. To which I roll my eyes because, like, can you just quit and stay quit? Like, come on.
Yeah, Dr. Light's, I don't find Dr. Light that interesting of a villain at all. Like, I'm sure he has his moments throughout comic lore, but in general, he's just very subpar.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are like specific standouts of his character, but as far as like the overall arc of him as a villain, like very like sandpapery, like very dry.
Yeah, he's just like your he feels like your standard, a lot of your standard golden age villain, just like twirls his mustache and I'm going to take over this city or I'm going to rob this bank. And there's nothing really else to them. That he shows up, he monologues, the heroes stop him, and we don't see him again for a long time. That's really just what he is in my eyes.
Which is basically what happens here. Wally, at the expense of his own life, is using his powers to try and stop Dr. Light, whereas Francis is like, can you just like wait in the car and I can do this?
Yeah.
To which, like, he should have just waited in the car because Francis was a badass. Like,
yeah,
she
he did
amazing.
He did save a couple people. Not that she maybe couldn't have, but he did save a couple people in the issue.
That's true. Something of note is that while Francis is actually doing a lot of like the typical superhero things while fighting Dr. Light, she comments that she likes it, which is very different for James and I, because previously to this, she was very much like, I'm out of the fold. I have these powers, but I don't want them. So out of this fight, as corny as it is, I think that's the most interesting takeaway, is that Francis is kind of like loving using her powers now.
Which is
Yeah.
interesting for her character, because I don't know how deep we want to get into that, but her character does a major turn in later down the line with her. So it's kind of like, right, it's like just a little shades of that coming.
Yeah, exactly. I even wrote in my notes that there is a magenta foreshadowing in the way that she was speaking about her
exactly
powers.
Yeah,
I also forgot that, like, that's how you know her, as magenta, not as Francis Kane.
Yeah, I had to there were a couple characters during all this that, like, I saw the names, like, it's like I recognize the powers, but I don't recognize the name, so I'd have to look them up.
It's pre-crisis, so they all get a little altered as well to some degree.
After they quickly disperse with Dr. Light because he's so meaningless to this story, other than what we just said, they actually meet up with Barry Allen, who, I mean, I have a strong bias against because I don't like the dude. He's my least favorite Flash. Honestly, at this point, if I was reading back in the day, I wouldn't like any Flash because Wally West isn't doing it for me as a character, and Barry isn't much better, honestly. But he goes with Wally and Francis to basically figure out that what we all have been speculating this entire issue is that Wally's dying from his powers. But there's a nice like button end of the issue where he calls Donna back. Unfortunately, she's not home, and says that he's actually going to go to the wedding. So I think that was a nice character growth for him, where like he put a lot of his grudges aside. Thankfully, Raven wasn't at the wedding anyway, so I think that also curbed a lot of my anxieties about Wally West being bitchy. But yeah, he calls her back and says he's going to be at the wedding. And I think this was actually one of the better like structured issues of the volume, in terms of like, you have an A storyline, you have a B storyline, and then you go back to the A storyline, which is not Wally. The A storyline is Donna and Terry, like their last little moment together before like the wedding chaos ensues.
And I think, like we discussed, the introduction of the bridesmaids is nice, and they have some texture and diversity to them that is good to see. Dr. Light is an incredibly weak villain, and the thing that I was kicking around in the back of my mind is that that's true of a lot of Titans villains, I would say, with the exception of Deathstroke, Trigon, Terra. It's sort of, they're just like the mustache twirly, I am evil, that is my personality, and it makes this kind of a slog as the volumes go, I feel, because there isn't that higher drama that some of the other characters bring to them.
I think luckily when you were bringing up the dates, so the end of this volume and pre-relaunch ends at 85, and I think once we dive into like the late 80s and the 90s, that's where we're going to get a lot of like the heavier stories and the heavier villain changes, I guess I should say, because a lot of these characters, a lot of these villains specifically, undergo so many changes throughout comics in reference to the Teen Titans characters. So I agree vastly with like, especially when we get to like the Fearsome Five stuff. I'm like, guys, just
Yeah.
quit it.
Yeah.
Like even in the text, it's like you guys are a bunch of fuck ups, and they're not
Well, they
strong
say-
villains.
They
They're
keep saying it.
powerful,
They keep
but-
saying it over and over again. We lose every time. And then they do the same thing every time. And that's why they lose. Like they never get it. And that's why their villains just aren't that compelling. Even like you take all of those members of the Fearsome Five, all 6/7 of them that we see at some point in these issues. And it's all the same stuff. They're just like, they're all like henchmen. It's like a team of henchmen working together. And it just never works. It never has in most comic iterations. There needs to be some sort of defined leader or leaders in some capacity for the villains to actually win as little as they do. And this is not the group that's going to do it.
I almost feel like Dr. Light should have just stayed with the Fearsome Five, because I think that was when he was more compelling, because
Yeah.
the drama within the team of villains fighting for whatever respective reasons they're villains was more
Mhm.
interesting than Dr. Light on his own.
Yeah.
And then the Fearsome Five like scrambling together more villains for no reason, like, or to be more powerful, even though they already expressly said they weren't powerful. We'll get into the Fearsome Five drama towards the end of this volume.
Yeah.
But that gives us the wedding issue, which is issue number 50.
Can I touch on Wally real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's something that you said, Joe, like it's kind of a nice moment at the end of issue 49 where he leaves the voicemail for Donna and basically says, I wouldn't miss this for the world. And he loves her. They don't have any interaction in the wedding issue. Am I correct? Right? I don't remember seeing them even speak to each other.
They don't. You
Right.
see them in a panel and that's it.
Like I was waiting for it. The only time I ever see Wally at the wedding issue is when he's like talking to Garth and Tula and Roy. Like it's just that one scene for them. And other than that, he's not mentioned. Like you can't tell it's him half the time because like a third of the male characters have red hair. So it's like, it's just as great as that little moment was, no payoff whatsoever with that issue being so long and with so many characters getting intertwined in some capacity. I feel like just maybe even a small moment between
I
those
would
two.
have rather not had the Bruce and Dick Grayson conversation.
Yeah,
and
they
had
didn't
a
need
Wally
that.
West and Donna conversation.
Yeah, that one, there were a couple that probably like, we don't need it. That one doesn't pertain to Terry or Donna, who this issue is supposed to be about. It's just Bruce and Dick just talking about the same shit they always talk about. And it's just, that whole scene made no sense to me. And I don't see why it was in there as opposed to something that really relates to these characters that the whole issue is supposed to be about.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a lot of stuff that was jam-packed. Well, we'll get into the wedding issue.
Yeah.
So we open up and what I thought was kind of ominous for a minute was the Temple of Athena scene on Themyscira, where the Amazons are worried because Hippolyta has been constantly at the altar of Athena and they don't know what she's like praying to her for.
Mhm.
Kind of set a weird, like, scary tone. I was like, I'm so inundated to comics and like the comic book tropes, and anytime there's a wedding, something always goes wrong.
I wrote that down too. I was like literally shocked that there were no issues throughout this. Like no issue came about throughout this entire issue. I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
And they tease it. They tease it multiple times. Yeah. Multiple times they tease it. And it always ends up like, oh, what a fun surprise this turned out to be. It's like, okay, yeah. And then you get to the end of the 40 pages or whatever it was. And it's like, oh no, we're done. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
I would like to know like which wedding for which superheroes started that trope, because it's not here. I guess thankfully, I mean, I enjoyed this issue by far because Donna and Terry, I love them together. And I love Donna. So I was never like bored. I just felt like it was a little bit too stuffed for one issue. But yeah, I was fully expecting there to be something going awry, but no, there wasn't, aside from Beast Boy needing to take a nap.
I feel like not enough happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It's really criminal that it isn't a focus on Donna. Like, I just want to rewrite the whole thing and make it about how she and Corey are friends and have some sort of wacky girls' night out bridesmaid adventure.
Yeah, we never really got like the bachelorette party outside of it being on Themyscira. We get the bridesmaid scene at the beginning of this issue, but like, I feel like for Terry and I think this is my criticism with comic books in general, is like, okay, this issue is supposed to be about Donna and Terry, and so much time is spent on so many other characters.
Yep. Especially Garth. Especially Gar. Gar gets a ton of screen time in this one.
Why? It should be Donna and Terry, more so Donna than anything, who are like front and center, because when they're front and center in this issue, it's fucking great. The vow scene was really emotional and I really liked it. So we just said, Gar Logan kind of dominates the first beginning of this issue with his like anxiety episode and people constantly underestimating him and him being like, wait a minute, like I'm actually planning this wedding really nicely. It's just giving me a lot of anxiety.
Plus they have there's a decent amount of Cyborg in this one too, and their paths intertwine because those two have a quick falling out and then a quick forgiveness in that one as well. So it's almost like you didn't really need that as much in there either. It just feels like with this issue that it's not about what's happening to Donna, it's about what's happening around her. And I don't really see the mass appeal to that. The issue is really cool. It's great to have all of those characters around there. That's what's always fun with like these big, like actual social events for the characters, is that you see everybody and how they interact in like a normal lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt a little empty at times.
I didn't need Bozo the Clown.
yeah. That was. It's like, he's gonna entertain the kids, and then we never see him again. He's just like,
it was literally just there to prove that Beast Boy is a competent wedding planner, which we had seen already. So like, there was no need to see it again. I digress.
Does some really neat things with panels. Like during the ceremony, we get the sort of breakdowns. We get all of the characters' reactions as a frame. There's some really cool stuff he does.
That's a great panel with with the squares all around them with everybody's faces. That's a great panel.
I wish it had their names on it though.
Also, that
I don't know who a lot of them are. I know
very
some
much
of
so.
them.
Guess who?
It literally turned into a game. I'm like, where's Tula? Is she there? Where's Gar? Everything with Joseph this issue or this volume, I loved. Jericho is becoming like almost one of my favorite. He's up there now in terms of my favorite Teen Titans characters. Adeline wakes up and finds him painting a portrait for their wedding as a wedding gift, which was so cute. And I loved it. And then we don't see him really for the rest of the issue. It's like everyone gets like one moment and then that's it. Except for Donna and Terry, who should get all of the moments.
Right.
Because it's their issue, but okay.
It wasn't. I really would say it was a Garfield issue, honestly. Because the next, like most of the rest of this trade is about him anyway. So at least a large part of it. So this one didn't need to be.
Agreed.
And I know we haven't said this, that like I've told you, Joe, Beast Boy was like my favorite Teen Titan, and this one Changeling. I never got used to that the whole time I was reading this when they kept calling him Changeling, because it's not the name I'm used to, but he was my favorite. And I really just kind of found him insufferable at times during this whole thing. So that was very disheartening as a Beast Boy fan.
The 80s Teen Titans is such a jarring differentiating of like characters versus like what I think you or I or James are used to. Always constantly going to be jarring. Always. We like, even for instance, Raven standing out of the wedding. She's not going because she's too unstable in terms of like controlling her powers, which I thought was kind of sad. Because I just want homegirl Raven to like be happy for once, live life a little bit for once. Like, I don't know how her powers work specifically in terms of like, I know what happens when she gets angry and when she gets stressed, but I don't know what happens when she gets like overtly happy. Like, we've gotten like one or two moments where Raven has felt like genuine happiness, but yeah, we've never seen her like have genuine happiness. So this could have been like a nice moment. Like, I would have liked to have seen Donna like beg her to come to the wedding. Like, that would have been really cute and a nice bonding moment. Even
if like they do a moment where Raven appears to her like privately, like Hippolyta does later on, like even if it was something like that, just something to have her presence there would have sufficed. Like, that's another thing that was missing. That's some of these other things that we don't really need. It could have been replaced by, and it would have made the issue feel more important. It would have felt more like a story for Donna than it did as well. So that would have been a good moment for sure.
Yeah. I have in my notes Gar's neon tuxedo. A lot of the fashion choices here are interesting. I do like that apparently they got an actual dress designer for this issue to design the bridesmaids dresses. Her name's Carol Flynn. When we get into Chicer Week, that's definitely going to be one of them. And I kind of want to like judge it from like an 80s lens. Like, okay, for the 80s, would these be like really cute bridesmaids dresses?
Right.
Which obviously I'm not going to know. I didn't live in the 80s. So before we get into that in Sheeker Week, like just know, like I'm gonna try my best to come at it from like an 80s lens. Steve Dayton, Gar's adoptive father and member of the Doom Patrol, and like severe alcoholic, which I don't remember being so present in the previous volumes as it is here, but has some like mystery task that we don't know yet. Turns out it is actually to hide Cyborg's cybernetic appearance at the wedding, like using his mental powers to do so.
Cyborg, who was already very hesitant to come to begin with.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which makes him like really angry, which I was like, pure teenager moment. Like, you could have, why wouldn't you have been happy? I don't understand it.
Yeah, that was
I'm
weird.
very much
Some ableism to it. It's the fact that he wasn't informed, he didn't consent.
Oh, I guess I
mean,
could see that.
It's overblown to a degree, like you said, teenage emotions, I suppose, but I think that's where it comes from.
If from that perspective, like there is a validity, but like you said, and we agreed, like the teenager compulsion to like just freak out. I'm like, dude, you're at her wedding. Like, can you like save it for like a very snarky like text message or or phone call? Like, I loved Sarah was like, I had to tell him to stop. I had to talk to him like a child. Also, welcome Ryan to the Sarah Sims show, where every time she shows up, while it's not necessarily the most screen time, it's great screen time because we stand Sarah Sims.
Yeah,
on this podcast.
There wasn't a lot of her in what I read, but I liked what I saw. Like, I think that was a good, like, her interactions with Cyborg, and there's one later on that we'll probably touch on as well, which is a really good moment for her. So yeah, she's a cool character.
So we get that whole dilemma. Gar and Cyborg quickly like make up later on in this issue. It's going to be a lot of jumping around because the issue itself jumps around so much. Let's talk about the moments for Donna Troy, because I feel like she deserves like the most conversation out of this issue. I think her vows were great. I actually looked up the song that they mentioned. What song was it? Does anyone know?
It's like a real song too. Like, I don't remember what it was called, but it's like
actually,
a legit
I can look
song.
it up in my YouTube history. Let's see. It is John Denver's Annie song.
That's right, John Denver.
Which I didn't know who that was, but I played it while I was reading the vows.
You don't know you don't know who John Denver was?
No, I had no idea.
He's the one that you've probably heard the song, being from the Midwest. Have you ever heard the song Country Roads? Like the Country Roads Take Me Home. That song?
Yeah.
That's John Denver, yeah.
There we go. I was like,
I taught you something on the show.
Well, of course it had to be about country music, but I'm not gonna say anything. I did play the song while they were reciting their vows. It was really great. Like, every moment with Donnie here was a treat. The conversation she had with Diana, I know James probably loved a lot, seeing as Wonder Woman is like your top tier character.
I mean, overall, I felt like they were kind of few and far between. I think the sort of Hippolyta reveal is weird because, like you say, it's played with that sort of horror element, page turner. And then also, in my argument against Terry, he has that weird comment where he's like, your mom is really hot. And I'm like,
yeah. Yep. I remember that.
Weird.
Yeah. Didn't need that.
I didn't need a lot of what the men were saying in this volume, if we're going to be frank.
Yeah.
A lot of it I didn't need. I think that like the Hippolyta reveal was so unexpected. And I wish I lived in the 80s to know like if the structure of this issue was meant to like subvert audiences. Like, okay, in the beginning that we thought like something horrific was going to happen, if like it turning out to be just a peaceful, like nothing wedding, if that was at all in and of itself a subversion of comic book tropes. But we'll never know. I think at face value, we are kind of whelmed with the entirety of it. But I think wedding issues are hard to pull off in comic books in general.
I compare it to Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix from X-Men in the 90s. And that also, like, no one attacks the mansion, that sort of thing. But I think the difference there was it had more genuine character moments in terms of trying to tie up little bits in their relationships.
Or stuff to propel the story forward. There was stuff hinted at here that like I thought was gonna develop a little bit, And it still might, but just not a lot of it was seen. We get a nice moment between Donna and Dick Grayson, which Ryan, as Dick Grayson being your favorite Teen Titan, I feel like that was also really something of note and really appreciated.
I did like that he was the one that gave her away. I thought that was a nice moment between the two of them. Yeah, Dick Grayson is, I think, the most interesting character, not in this group of issues that we read, but in terms of like, because he has a lot of, he doesn't show it, but he has shortcomings in terms of his skill and power ability amongst his teammates, is more inexperienced teammates that, those things. It's almost like, I'm going to go just a little tangent here. It's almost like Dick Grayson's role on the Titans is to train his teammates to be better than him. Because he is the de facto leader, and Robins have almost always been leaders on the Titans team, but he was the first real leader of the Titans. And he just keeps that moniker in many other instances of the team that he's on it. And I just think it's a nice moment that he can be very frank with some of them, like he is with Garfield at later times, but he can also be very kind and understanding to some of them, like he is with Starfire. And then with this one with Donna, he's just like an older brother basically to her in this one. And it's a very nice side of Dick to see, especially considering, of course, his upbringing, with his parents and living with Bruce and training as a kid. Like, I like those moments for Dick Grayson because those are the moments that separate him from Batman in my eyes, because I'm not a huge Batman fan. I sometimes get a little tired of the brooding all the time from him. And that's probably why I like Dick Grayson as much as I do, because I like what Batman does as a hero, but Dick Grayson does it in a way that as a character, I just feel like I can root for him more. So that's why I really like seeing him.
The sibling vibe between him and Donna is like one of the most welcomed things that I've gotten from reading all of this, just to be a little bit more reflective of the entire volume or volumes as a whole, because it's just like, I didn't know that before this. My interactions with them as characters, primarily when I was reading books, Donna was dead for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because comic books. And then aside from that, Dick Grayson was Batman for a lot of it. So there wasn't really that interaction between the two of them as characters. So it's really cool to see that here. And like him giving her away was so cute. The way they set up the panels of all the bridesmaids and the groomsmen coming down for the wedding was really nice. I really appreciated like all of the artwork in regards to the wedding was spot on and amazing. I gush over the artwork all the time. And ironically enough, a lot of these issues aren't drawn by George himself, but I feel like a lot of them stick to the spirit of what Teen Titans is. So that was really nice because I was kind of afraid. I think at this point in time, he was working on Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yeah. So he didn't have a lot of the time to like draw 17 issues of like 3 different comic books at once. So it was really cool to see like other artists really taking the reins and really doing the Teen Titans justice, in my opinion. Other standouts for the wedding are like just the insane amount of cameos, like insane. I was like, what's the phrase? Like, not dopamine. Is it serotonin? Where like every other Teen Titan that like revealed themselves in the wedding, I'm like, I know who that is. That's great.
Yeah.
Like when Batgirl, Beta Kane showed up, or Golden Eagle, Tula and Garth in the pool, which they actually mentioned the chlorine. I had talked about that last volume when they showed up. I was like, why are they going into like a chlorinated pool? I don't think that would really help. They actually fixed that here. They commented on the fact that thought ahead and made it like a freshwater pool, which also sounds really gross, but that's not neither here or there. It was welcome to see. We've got a Gnark mention in this wedding volume or wedding issue. We got a Titans West callback from the Golden Age, which was really cool. There was when they mentioned Sting, is that actually Sting? Is that the celebrity Sting when they were like, oh, thank you, Sting, I really appreciate that? Or was that a comic character that I didn't know about?
Let me flip to the panel. I don't think that's Sting, no.
Because I feel like, wouldn't he be like a teenager or something in this issue, or in real life?
No, and this was the 80s. He would have been like at like the height of his celebrity at that point. He would have been playing with the police at this time.
Because it was very jarring. Is it Sting? I need to know.
I don't think it's the musician Sting.
No.
Where is it at?
He's like long, dark, curly hair.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been him.
Where was it at? I was so taken aback. I'm like, who is that?
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe. Wait, I'm wrong. He's not the musician playing. You're right. He's this dude in the background who, I don't know, has sunglasses and blonde hair.
He's just a wedding guest.
Maybe that's British Sting.
Oh, maybe it could. Maybe that could have been him.
Wealthy and influential Gar and what's his face, Dayton or?
I mean, that happens. That happens sometimes with comics. That like a random celebrity will show up in them, and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, you're in this fictional world too. Cool.
I'm glad he was the only one because I'm just coming off of the Hellfire Gala fatigue.
Yeah,
of,
I
like,
knew.
spot that celebrity.
Yep, I knew you were gonna bring that up.
Roll
Yeah,
my eyes.
I remember when we went over the list of celebrities for that issue, and it is just terrible. It's
You
just
can tell
terrible.
Straight Man made that list. I'm just
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
gross. Oh, Clark brings Lana Lang to the wedding.
I was going to ask about that. I wanted to ask you guys about that. Like, I know Clark's probably not a main character in the Titans books, but like, is this a thing like in his run at this time? Like,
I have no clue. So we've had all of like what, James, like 2 run-ins with
Mhm.
Superman, maybe.
They're a panel each, I'd say. Yeah, he just. I
Never
know
with
that
Lois.
she's Lois's rival, as it were, especially in more of the Silver Age comics. So I guess that could have been a thing here.
Maybe at this point in time, like Lois and him weren't really a thing outside of like the flirtation. And it's more like, I would probably liken it to the Superman the Animated Series, where like if he did some like formal, crazy, like public events, he would bring Lana with him, kind of like a cover. So that was interesting
Beard.
to see here. I was thinking beard as a beard, but it was interesting to see her here. I'm like, Lana, what are you doing at this wedding? Hello, where's Lois?
I saw the red hair before I read that it was her name, and I was like, huh, that's probably not Lois.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was a little jarring.
I mean, I was taken aback. I'm like, what are you doing here?
But
Where's
Lana's
Lois?
great. Lana's great. So it was great to see her.
Some other Teen Titans callbacks. We did mention Golden Eagle, Beta Kane, Garth and Tula. We get Mal Duncan and Karen showing up to the wedding, the Guardian / Vox and Bumblebee, respectively. And a lot of our Teen Titans characters are just bragging that they're retired.
A lot of
I'm
them.
real sad about it.
A lot of them. Yeah.
I'm just like, wait a minute.
It's like
I
there's
know you
more.
guys are fighting crime. What are you doing retired?
There's more retired ones than active ones.
Yeah, honestly. And more of them are like super aged up. Like,
yeah.
Mal and Karen look like they're in their like 30s.
Yeah, they look very aged up in this one.
And Dula Dent, what?
Mm-hmm.
What?
That one. I was like, huh? Okay.
I was so taken aback. I like Dula Dent a lot, and I'm just like, when she was talking about how she put on 40 pounds, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm sorry, excuse me. You should be on Titans East. This isn't the Dula that I know, but all right. The subtle hints to her random ass origin story is great in this issue because Nightwing comments about like, you're too young to be, or I think he said too old or too young to be Two-Face's daughter. And she's like, ha ha ha, I'm not gonna say.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah.
It's a common state between the Golden Age comics all the way up to pre the 52 story in more modern age comics that we don't know Dula Dent's origin story. She switches it up so much that like we don't know. At one moment she'll brag about being the Riddler's daughter. The next she's like, oh yeah, Two-Face is my dad. Get a Hawk and Dove cameo, which was really cool.
Yeah, that was a nice one.
I was kind of surprised to not see Thunder and Lightning here. Where the hell are they? Because as previous, Ryan, they were their premiere was in this run. So I feel like of all the Titans to include, it should have been them too.
Well, they do make a point to say towards the end of the issue when they're showing like the guest book, Donna says that like, I didn't even get to speak to half of these people. So
that's true. So they could have been there and we just didn't see.
We didn't know. They never state how many people are attending the wedding. The only ever line we get is from Sharon. It's like there's like over 100 cars out there. Like that's all. It's the only hint to how many people are there we ever get.
It's too many people.
It's a lot of people.
I would have had such anxiety. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is way too many. And then the last thing I have in my list is the Dick Grayson and Bruce conversation where the only thing I took from it was that Jason Todd has been adopted by someone because they keep calling Jason Jay.
I noticed that. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's his nickname as a kid. No wonder he was a brat. Like, this conversation could have not been in here. And I would have been totally
they're
out.
saying in this that Bruce adopted Jason Todd. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I
thought you said
that's
some
what I
random
got.
Woman adopted him.
No, I thought the conversation was Dick was asking Bruce why he never adopted Dick because he adopted Jason, and Dick was curious
Oh.
why. That's what I got from it.
Mhm.
Whoop. Sorry, when Jason Todd is mentioned or shows up, I kind of tune out because I don't like him. But that's
You're-
fine.
Where's
You're
that
one of the
crowbar?
Yeah, you voted for him to die that many years ago.
If I was alive he died in 88 or 89, I think one of those two, I probably would have voted to kill him off.
You manifested it.
Manifested it after I was born.
Yep,
All right.
yep, absolutely.
Checks out. But that is the end of the wedding issue. Any other last minute thoughts? I know this is like the heaviest one.
They fly off into the sunset, and that's very cute. More interesting paneling by George.
It's stunning work. It's so good. And I'm glad they preserved like a lot of the coloring for this one too, because it's like a lot of the panels just pop off the page for me.
Mhm. But, I mean, mostly I feel like this was a weak run. This issue, the ones around it, I think we are seeing sort of a spin the wheels until crisis effect, I would
Yeah.
theorize.
I think that this volume has the strongest ending of any volume that we have, mostly
did.
because it's not a random one issue thing.
Hmm.
It actually like ties back into stuff to the previous issue. So that was nice. I think that's the strongest positive besides like I like Donna getting married. That's just me.
Yeah, I think the latter half of this trade is much more interesting in terms of Titan's story lore.
Opening up with issue 51, Lilith is decided to stay with the Titans for a little bit, and we get more of her powers. James, I want to know, because you do have you like certain redheads in comic books. I want to know how Lilith stands up in your
I mean, we call this red,
orange, cherry blonde. Coloring in the 80s was weird.
I mean, I sent you a meme when I was first reading this, and it's from this panel she has in the beginning of the issue where Dick and Corey are already fighting people, and Lilith provides, please be careful. My powers aren't always accurate, but I'm picking up flashes of danger. And I'm like, this is very Karen, Mean Girls. There's a 30% chance that it's already raining. It's like, what? No.
I love her here because Lilith, no matter what, she's doing superhero work, right? Like she is fully a part of the team, even though she doesn't like to admit it. But girl is not going to put on a costume to save her damn life. She's going to walk out there in a t-shirt and some tights and some leg warmers, and that's it. She doesn't give a damn. Like that's what I appreciate about her character the most. But I agree. She's oftentimes, at least in this volume, used as a plot device to propel the story forward, or to just to have a word bubble for some reason. It's this battle that we're watching, which is with some like arms dealers. Another point for James is Starfire is kind of reminiscing, and this kind of grows as the volume goes on, about her training on Okara and her warrior tendencies versus being a superhero and what that means to her, and how that translates to her relationship with Dick Grayson.
It has no real resolution to it. It's just sort of an ongoing conflict for them to play with. But I do certainly think it's interesting because it's a different read of justice. And I think especially more in the contemporary sphere, looking at what they tried to do with New 52, Starfire is maybe a more modern take in some ways, a more ancient take in others, but that I love and hate the lack of compassion. It's nice to have her just be like, they're murderers, let them die sometimes. I mean, it satisfies something, right?
I think that I think it makes her and Dick Grayson's relationship very unique because it's not necessarily like the breaking point for her as a character in terms of like her love for Dick Grayson. Like it's definitely there, but she's constantly conflicted. And I think that speaks to like the idea that relationships aren't easy and that it's a standout amongst the Teen Titans relationships that we've seen so far. Like obviously like Donna with Terry. Terry's not necessarily, he's not a superhero, but it's a different unique dynamic in and of itself. You have Cyborg and Sarah Sims, which is different. And then you have Nightwing and Starfire, which I think is the most unique, probably amongst a lot of the relationships of the time in terms of like other comic book stories of the 80s. I don't think a lot of them have this kind of dynamic where it's this character who was brought up as a warrior fitting into a superhero landscape. And then Dick Grayson, who has been brought up as a superhero, trying to balance his love for her. It's very compelling in my opinion. And I really appreciated that like we get so much insight into Starfire as a character. Introducing the next Titan trope is the parent problem, because the one backstory we find out about Lilith is that she has none.
Right.
Much like Donna Troy, she doesn't know a damn thing about who she is or where she came from. We find out later on that she did research while she was away from the Titans and found nada, nooch, not a thing about who she is or her origins as a character. Starfire actually mentions the Titan trope in text. She's like, oh yeah, when you join the Titans, oftentimes you don't know who your parents are.
I mean, as a reader, I'd rather go into it with the like not knowing who the character's parents are, as opposed to like seeing what happened to Tim Drake. Like I would much rather just not ever know who their parents are, so I don't have to see that again.
Oh, poor Tim. This is where Lilith agrees to be Starfire's new roommate because Donna is now married and obviously going to be moving out. And then we get the hints about the Terminator or Deathstroke the Terminator's trial coming up.
When does that name change take effect for the Terminator into Deathstroke? When does that happen in terms
So I
of like
think
DC?
he's called Deathstroke the Terminator in here, but they refer him.
Was he called Deathstroke in this? If he was, I never caught it.
I don't think so. They call him Deathstroke the Terminator like as a moniker, but then everyone calls him the Terminator.
Right. So I guess my better question is, when do they drop the Terminator aspect of his alias?
I don't know. It probably happened around the time when they started calling him Slade in the Teen Titans comic book or animated series.
Because whenever they did it, it wasn't soon enough. So
Terminator is a very strange way to go about calling him.
I would imagine that around the time that, the Terminator was a popular thing in film and pop culture is probably around the same time maybe they steered away from that. Like it tends to happen with comics. It
probably lines up like that.
Yeah, I think that was annoying the whole time I read all the stuff with him. It's like the Terminator.
The Wilsons kind of dominate these next two issues.
Yeah.
Because President Marlowe of another random Middle East country that doesn't exist, right? It was
made up. I don't know.
Made up, completely fictional. Has a gripe against Adeline Wilson because he wants the information she has when she was working for him, which like he didn't make her write it down at all, ever. But all right, you want to run a country the way you want to run a country, I guess. He sends returning villain Cheshire after her, who already has a gripe against the Teen Titans already. I did see. Did she mention in the word bubbles that she had a child already?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so too.
When she's arguing,
a very quick turnaround from her first appearance with the random villains that we saw a long time ago, or not a long time ago. I think it was maybe 2 volumes ago. So 2 volumes ago, she's introduced with a bunch of random villains. She's the only one that stands out, and then she shows up again here, and she's fully had a baby already with who we all know it's going to be Roy Harper.
Right.
It was a very quick turnaround. I mean, Cyborg talks about later in this volume that he's only been a superhero for a year. So in a year's time, she's made herself known as a villain, hooked up with Roy Harper, and had a kid and is now on a revenge mission against the Wilson family. She's just work.
There you go.
It's a lot, but okay. We get a great fight scene between her and Adeline, where once again, Adeline Wilson shows that she's a badass.
Yeah.
Just great women characters in this run, again, to like kind of bring it up retrospectively. And this fight scene just kind of like cements my idea of that. She ultimately does lose, and one of her coworkers ends up perishing in the battle, which was sad.
Shout out to Gertie.
Shout outs to Gertie.
Yeah, shout out to
and
Gertie.
Amber,
Yeah.
who end up being like weird spotlights of this volume. This kind of starts the running rumor that Jericho is a traitor,
Yeah.
because the CIA wants Jericho and Adeline to come in for questioning / to like figure out the knowledge that they have as people, and kind of brews together this rumor that Jericho is yet again another traitor of the Teen Titans, yet he's actually not. And why would you think that, Gar Logan? You're so dumb.
That was hard when you're reading that, like at least I understand where he's coming from. Like, he's just been hurt by this.
Yeah.
Maybe more so than anybody else on the team. So I get it, but his reactions to all of this, from the stuff with Jericho to eventually getting into the trial, it's not good
It is
character
capital
work.
E extra.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not good. Like, it's not a good showing for Garfield Logan.
no, not in this
little
volume.
run
We've
here.
had other
No.
instances where like Gar has shown some real great character depth, but here he kind of like reverts.
Yeah, he tries to salvage it at the end a little bit, but there's a lot of damage done to his character in the middle pack of this volume.
Oh, apparently amidst the CIA asking for Adeline and Jericho, they admit to knowing that Tara was a traitor.
Right.
So I kind of feel like the secret's slowly coming out of the bag, that everyone's going to find out and know, because it apparently was a secret that the Teen Titans wanted to keep prior or after her death. This gives us the Gar Logan versus Jericho fight, which was really painful to watch. I was very sad because I don't want to see the teammates fight.
It's barely a fight. Jericho kind of washes him, honestly.
Yeah. Because Jericho's amazing that way.
Yeah, he's incredibly powerful. Like, people don't realize how powerful he actually is. So
yeah. We also get some great foreshadowing into what his character becomes later on. I don't want to spoil it, but just know that there is some foreshadowing in here about who he becomes as a character. And I don't want to say it. If you dare to go back and read this tumultuous issue in regards to his character. He easily defeats Gar and then goes to this character Amber, who's another worker of Adeline's.
They just are gonna go rescue her. Like,
and
that's their
about
plan.
it. I think the other thing of note for this issue is that something is buried in ice, and that Lilith kind of senses it somehow.
Yeah,
which we get into issue 52.
Yeah, and then in issue 52, there's really just two major story beats, and that's really it. Like, that's the whole issue.
A great fight scene in issue 52 with Joey and Amber versus the kind of like stock Middle East characters, which I think is like super insensitive.
Yeah, I would like to call out the colorist. They ran out of natural skin tones, and so Middle Eastern people are rendered gray, which kind of plays up with Jinx a bit when she's introduced as well as an Indian woman. She can have a sort of gray cast to her skin that's very inappropriate.
It's weird. And I don't even like, even from a defamatory standpoint, I don't understand it. Like, what is the goal? Unless they just were like, oh, we need to show a difference between like Hispanic characters and Middle East characters, and that's like the only color in the colorist color wheel we can do.
I think they honestly ran out of processed colors based on the technology of the time period, and they simply weren't considered important enough to merit a human skin tone, is what it's indicative of. It's a sad statement of the time.
Like, it's sad in retrospect, something so innocuous as like we're running out of colors because that's all the technology can afford means that like it kind of blooms a fucking stereotype. Like, why? It's just sad, honestly. And I know Jinx as a character of color who is striking visually, and her skin tone deserves to be that of an actual Indian person. But we'll get into her character later down the line. We get some fun fight scenes, more Lilith premonitions. Cheshire is just a badass for both of these issues. She takes out Adeline Wilson, Joseph twice, and Amber. So girl is just racking up those characters left and right, really proving to be a formidable villain, which I think she gets kind of sidelined later on, and a lot of the times. And then as we like come to know her, turned into an anti-hero more towards like Young Justice era DC Comics. But it was really cool to see her as like a no nonsense villain. And I think they really kind of wiped away a lot of the like Asian stereotypes here, where like there's one instance of overt like Gremlins level, like what, with that guy who taught her martial arts. I was like, what is that?
Oh yeah,
That
was
okay.
Yeah, that was weird.
But then once she leaves that scene, like she just becomes a character.
I mean, I kind of said it earlier, but this issue really, there's no real depth to anything that happens in this issue except right at the end with Lilith. All the stuff with Adeline, it's very paint by the numbers. Like, we're going to go save this person, a couple quick fights here and there, but we saved the person. Like, I guess the only thing that really comes from that is she has an interesting moment where Jericho has the opportunity to stop. I forget the president guy's name. I do not. Marlowe. Thank you.
Yeah.
He has the opportunity to kill him, and instead he grabs the grenade and like throws it out the window, and everybody survives. And she has like I guess you call it a lapse in judgment with him, where she like freaks out. This guy tortured me. Why didn't you stop? And Amber's the one that kind of consoles him and tells him like, it's okay. And like tells Adeline that like he did the right thing. Like, he's not a killer like you or his father. And I thought that was an issue that maybe doesn't have a lot of interesting moments. I thought that one was fairly interesting.
Yeah, I wrote it down in my notes as Adeline's army programming kind of being a toxic trait that she has, because she was brought up as a soldier. Her natural response to that was to kill him,
right?
And her immediate reaction being kind of like, I don't want to say crazy, but being very like high energy, high tension, kind of toxic towards Joseph.
Yeah.
I think is a natural response from that programming she endured as a person.
And it just really shows how different Joseph is from his parents as well.
It plays against his sweetness. And I think also some hints of that quasi-queerness that they debated back and forth at this stage of the character, that degree to which he's sort of at odds with his parents and their ideology. I mean, that's carried out with a lot of the Titans, the parent versus child thing, but especially with Joseph, I think it sort of has hints of his queer status, I would say.
Yeah. I wish we lived in that universe where like the higher ups had given them the go ahead and like they had come to an agreement to make him just flat out queer, because I feel like that would have been great for representation. I mean, having the privilege of growing up the way we grow up now, like we can just out and about, like have these characters be gay. Sure, there is still some pushback. Here's looking at you, John Kent, but like, for the most part, they're able to be queer. As like back then in the 80s, there was a lot of hesitancy.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been in that universe that like really let that be a thing.
I should mention, I think
go ahead.
The weird angel alien is woken from the ice and imprints on.
Oh, is that issue 52?
He's revealed right at the end of 52, but his story really begins in 53. But it does like tail slate the end of that issue is his reveal. Because Cyborg's trying to get everybody out of the room, and Lilith is like, no, I have to touch him. I have to be near him. Very strange dialogue for that. But yeah, it does just basically lead into basically the entirety of issue 53.
Yeah. So issue 53, we get Donna returning. Thankfully, she's back from her honeymoon, and we get this cute little tennis game that they're playing in this like faux danger room, but not danger room. It's so weird.
It's almost it was like a VR thing almost for them, like a
Yeah.
virtual reality location.
I will say that while Donna cannot best Starfire in combat, she can best her in tennis.
No tennis in Okara.
Oh, yeah. They play tennis with people's heads.
Yeah, there you go.
We get a mini scene where Lilith is on her way to the tower and is attacked by Deathstroke, who we are all under the assumption is awaiting trial, which actually helps his trial later on.
Mhm.
When we get into what that actually was, I have some strong feelings.
It's very weird because they parcel it out. It's a slow reveal after the fact, and it's very. You could say he's noticeably acting odd, I suppose, because like his shtick is he hops out of nowhere, shoots at her, and is like, "I'm the Terminator!" Wah ha ha ha! And I'm like, that's a bit extreme for Deathstroke.
Yeah.
A bit obvious that it's not him.
Yeah,
It's
he's
so out of
he's very much an operate in the shadows kind of character. So yeah, it was very like you could tell right away when he starts monologuing that, oh, this is definitely a different person.
That brings us to the trial itself, which over the course of the next 2 issues is the most exhausting thing, because
I just want to say, are we not really going to touch on the winged angel guy, the Titans really trying to capture or defeat him, because he does get away. It's just
Joe doesn't want to talk about it because it's weird and unresolved.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm fine. I'm totally happy with moving on. I'm totally happy with moving on, and I didn't really care about it, but I just wanted to make sure. Like, okay.
So he doesn't get a name yet. Until I know who it is, but he doesn't get a name until next volume, and all he does is one long fight or chase scene that goes on for like 7 pages.
Yeah, it was boring.
Of thought bubbles of him thinking in a different language, but like obviously we know because they're translating it, that he is attracted to Lilith and that it has to be love, and that he doesn't know why he has this connection to her.
No, yeah, I don't.
Some like weird star-crossed lover thing, but like it doesn't go anywhere this volume.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Very odd.
Yeah. Let's move on. We're just hitting the halfway point. So yeah, let's keep going.
I mean, his outfits. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
And I have to acknowledge my own bias. I don't like Law and Order. I don't like any of those procedural. The most like legal hoopla in the media I like is like Exorcism of Emily Rose, and that's it.
Or like that scene from The Adventures of Billy and Mandy, that episode where they're in the courtroom with Fred Burger.
I can't even remember that scene.
Yep, that's. I
thought you were gonna bring up like Legally Blonde or.
No, that one's good too, but I went super deep cut. This is a nerd podcast. You got to go deep cut on these.
I mean, fair. I haven't rewatched all of Billy and Mandy.
That episode is great. You should watch it. It's on HBO Max. Like just that one in general, you should watch it because it's hilarious.
The legal proceedings are headed by Adrian Chase, who we know is the vigilante,
right?
Who you're just being introduced to because he's a side character on the Peacemaker show. For some reason.
Well, actually, technically, his first live action appearance was as the villain in one of the seasons of Arrow on the CW. So,
are you fucking kidding me?
Adrian Chase, yeah. Fun fact: that was also the season I stopped watching. So good job by me. I just wanted to point that I saw his name and I was like, oh, I have to bring this up to Joe because there's no way he knows that he showed up in that Arrow TV show. There is no way. So you're welcome for that. My job is done. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.
Good to know that the CW has butchered like almost every fucking character that I know of.
It's just Berlanti stuff, man. The Berlanti produced stuff. It's really hit or miss, and they start out very strong usually. And I know for you, it's like for you, definitely not, but for like the general populace, very like fairly strong, I guess we could go as, and it just really deteriorates from there, man. It's not. Doom Patrol's good though. I will stand by that. Doom Patrol's good.
To like bring it back to the legal thing, like I plead the fifth. Like,
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there you go.
Know what I have to fucking think about. Anyways, so Adrian Chase apparently has retired being the killing
another person that retired.
Yeah, the murderous vigilante, and now is a court judge because he just got away with all the murders he did, I guess.
I did. You were going to say that we're going to really get introduced to him in Peacemaker. That's what you were going to say, right?
Yeah, that's like where I thought you would have first seen him.
That's where I'm going to really learn who he is. Yeah. because the iteration from Arrow is terrible. So
I've already seen the trailer for Peacemaker, and Vigilante he seems like the comic relief, and I'm like, that's not.
I think that whole show's going to be comic relief. So
That's true. But also, like, that's not Adrian Chase. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. James Gunn can do what he wants.
yeah, just remember in Suicide Squad, Peacemaker talks about murdering children, and he's one of the funny characters in the movie.
Why did they make him? I don't know why they gave him a show. Anyways,
Yeah, I'm here for it. I love John Cena. So any more John Cena content, I'm in.
the only thing that I took, interestingly enough, from the legal jargon that I exhaustively read through, this isn't our first time with legal stuff in the podcast, and I have the same sentiments all the time that I hate it, is that there's a law in this universe where a superhero doesn't have to give away their secret identity in order to give a statement in the court of law. I think that's the biggest thing to take out of this issue. Next issue, we get into like the jury verdict for Deathstroke, right? Isn't that the next issue?
No, it's all in one.
This one.
Is it all in one?
Yeah, the whole trial takes place just in one issue, basically.
Well, I mean, we can just come out and say it. He's acquitted on all of the like murderous charges, but they get him for a year for having illegal firearms. I guess
The way I read it, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I read it that he wasn't even on trial for any of the murder stuff. It was all just kind of like happenstance crimes that he was mostly on trial for. Because Gar goes out of his way at the beginning to be like, you know, like, what about, you know, him murdering me, and what about what had happened with Tara? Because like they don't bring any, the case doesn't bring any of that up. So
what about isms?
Yeah, it's like the whole thing is just a sham from start to finish. Like
the whole legal proceedings was a circus.
Yeah,
just
literally.
Yeah,
there's literally a circus elephant.
Beast Boy turns into a freaking elephant in the courtroom. I'm like, do you think this is Judge Judy? Like,
well, he did it on purpose. Like he had a plan.
Or like the Amanda Show where she's like bring out the dancing lobsters and it's just a green version of Beast Boy. Like,
right.
I don't understand, sir. I know you're angry, but like, no one should have told him to go to that courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
The team should have been like, stay the fuck home.
Yeah, I mean, like even the ones that did go, they didn't accomplish anything. Like they were all just set up to fail the whole time.
Honestly, Deathstroke had like the best lawyer.
I just don't understand. Once the fake Deathstroke is around, and the whole premise of like, oh, you don't know who's actually under the masks, you can't prove it. Having people that won't share their identities because they wear masks to then go against that doesn't make much sense. It doesn't work, because that was the lawyer's thing. He was like, so he says to Nightwing, like, so we can't really prove that you're actually, you know, the real Nightwing, right? And he's like, well, I guess technically no, you couldn't. It's like, then how could you prove that Slade Wilson is actually the Terminator? And Nightwing's like, well, I guess you got me.
We're just in the back of the courtroom eating popcorn, like, damn, he's right.
Yeah, he's right. He was right. Like, it doesn't work. It was funny. Like, you're supposed to be rooting for, you know, Wilson to get, you know, life in prison, but if you're watching the actual trial, you're just like, yeah, like that lawyer was 100% right. Like, he brought up great points, and they couldn't. Yeah, they got him. And even then, he still only gets like a year in prison.
Yeah.
Which turns into one evening of prison.
So his verdict is the end of the issue. Mm-hmm. I wrote in my notes, too much court drama, which I always do when we're in a courtroom in the Teen Titans comic books. It's always going to be a bullet point in my notes.
Jeez, how often are you in the courtroom with these characters?
It's this the third time now.
Third time just in this run that you've done? Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't need it. I hate it. Like, you want to make a legal drama comic book with the DC universe? By all means.
We have characters for that.
Yeah, like, honestly, anyway, I don't need the
put Detective Chimp in a courtroom.
That would be a great book.
Yeah, not the Titans.
I would love that comic.
Yeah.
That brings us to, does Lilith leave at the end of this issue?
She leaves in the middle of this issue. So
the only thing to establish with her is the reason she's leaving the Titans again is because they kind of disregard her feelings, which is kind of true.
Yeah.
Like,
her feelings are weird, but they are still her feelings.
Yeah, like, it's like you guys just totally disrespected Homegirl right there for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
And that's the reason she left the first time, is like, the disrespect. I'm like,
This
Lily
team is
can't get
this
no
team
love.
is this team's really bad at keeping its members. It's
The
really bad
rotating
at
door
it.
for Teen Titans is
Yeah.
such a thing that
Most
welcome
of-
to the
I know, but most of their reasons are all like their reasons for leaving are usually pretty good, but like
Yeah.
the team's ability to try and convince them to stay is always terrible.
Mhm.
I mean, she reveals that she was having stress related fire powers
Yeah.
that she doesn't know where they're coming from and she still can't figure it out.
Mhm.
Which I hope gets covered in the next volume. I know that Lilith does come back. Spoiler alert. I mean, the way she left, it felt like she was coming back.
It's comics.
Yes.
Everybody comes back.
Yeah, I need these people to like go to therapy. I say that every episode. Like, God damn it!
Yeah, and Garfield should be first in line.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Garfield needs. I feel like
Especially
he needs a week in a psych ward.
well, especially with issue 55 coming up. Like definitely.
Whew.
This was also 54 was also the issue where we find out what Cyborg's doing though.
He argues with his grandparents about it.
Yep. He wants to look human again, and that one doctor, if like Clyburn or whatever her name is gonna try and
So starting with issue 55, my first notes are that Gar's behavior is borderline sociopathic
Mhm.
because he's just fueled entirely by rage. Like
Mhm.
it's just complete absence of any afterthought. He's just acting on like pure rage fueled instinct. This is while Wilson is actually in jail, planning to get out within the day, apparently. Wintergreen updates him on Adeline and Jericho's just overall state, which is very weird because it's like prior to this, you might think that Slade Wilson gives a damn about anyone but himself, but he doesn't. Like last volume, he made it very explicitly clear he don't give a fuck. He let Jericho get his throat slit to kill the assassin that was holding him. So when he's like doing push-ups in the prison and he's like, oh, but they're still my family. I'm like, that's a damn lie.
Mhm.
And you know it. You're just nosy.
Well, this issue was really disappointing. It's maybe the low point of the volume overall.
Yeah.
Because I would gesture to how iterating on the stories, people have felt the need to revise it. Like if maybe I'm pushing us ahead, but Gar goes off the handle. He wants to kill Slade, and they resolve it with a heart-to-heart where Gar realizes Slade isn't so bad, and
That's yeah.
Mara was crazy and evil, and they bond over that, and it's weird as hell.
Mhm.
Like what
I hate
is
it
this?
so much. I'm like, I want to be like Marv. What was the thought behind this? Like, Tara cannot be just the end all be all evilest person. She was 16. Like, the fuck? Unless you're the Omen, unless you're that little kid who is literally like Satan's hellspawn, I don't think so. Gar tries to like frame Slade for trying to escape prison,
Yeah, because he attacks him in the prison.
which doesn't work because then he's released like hours later. Gar gets in like verbal fights with everybody, gives Slade Wilson a letter being like, okay, you meet here at this point, and this is where everything's going to end. We're going to fight, and that's it. Like, one of us is going to win, and one of us is going to lose. So he shows up, and so does Slade as Slade. He doesn't show up in costume, doesn't show up anything, and he's like, yeah, I want to talk. And I'm like, what? This is where we're going with this? What? Okay.
Especially since the beginning of the issue, like the cover and like the first pages really set it up as like this big heavyweight fight between these two characters that people have been waiting to really go at it. You know, and like James said, it's just a letdown. Like the Gar like goes to like claw at him as some bird he can transform into. And he's like, I can't do it. I really can't do it. And so he's, do you want something to eat? And it's like, oh, what? What is this? You are a mercenary, sir. Like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna leave.
About being tired, and I'm like,
yeah. Why? Like, it's so drastic because as he's leaving the courtroom in the previous episode, he's just taunting them. Like,
he's bragging.
Yeah, just taunting them. And
narcissism
it's just like,
on full fucking display. And then next issue, oh, I'm tired.
Yeah, I don't get it. It was such a drastic character change within one issue that it's very jarring and not well done at all for
He's
a
talking
fight
about like
for-
going to Africa with Wintergreen, which
Yeah.
like Kristen Wiig a la Bridesmaids moment, gay, but that's besides the point. I just like, I don't understand. Such a character shift is, and their conversation really just was like repeating stuff that had happened before in both of their respective lives. And I'm like, but you guys didn't reach a middle ground. The only middle ground you guys reached is that Tara's an awful human being.
Every conversation was Slade going, "Hey, this happened," and then Gar going, "No, you're lying," and then Slade being, "Am I though?" And then Gar like, "Well, I guess you're not actually then." It's like that was the whole thing. He did it like 4 times.
Yeah, like the resolution I feel is mostly Gar blamed Slade for corrupting Tara, and he says, "No, I didn't. She was always bad." And Gar's like, "Oh, well, I feel better then." It's very.
It's not like those two things can't coexist. Like,
Right.
she could be a level of bad, and Slade can see that and make her worse.
Mhm.
There's no reason for him to believe anything Slade is saying either. Like,
No.
None. He killed him. They fought before, and he
Yeah.
stopped Gar's heart.
mhm.
Like the lowest point of the issue of the volume. I would say probably the lowest point of the, if we're talking retrospectively, of the entire like Marv Wolfman George Perez run is this issue.
Really,
I would
really.
venture to say
There's
I mean, what-
I listened to your guys' show. Like, I know you have a lot of harborings towards characters like Wally West and Roy Harper for a lot of stuff that they did in past issues. You think this is the worst resolution / moment of all of this?
they're bringing up my fave. Like, Tara is a problematic fave of mine,
Yeah.
and like to talk about her like this is just a level of flagrant. Like, no. She is
Yeah.
not that bad. She is not that like evil on her own volition. I think not all of that, but a large portion of that came from Slade. And I said this last podcast episode, to diminish Slade's involvement in her upbringing as a villain in like a watered down, like, oh, she was always bad. I just added a little bit of flavor. I'm like, no, you're the main fucking ingredient, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you are the POS piece of shit.
It's like Tara. It's basically like Tara was a bunch of ingredients that don't go together, and if you put them together, they combust, and then Slade stirred them together. That's how it is.
Literally. And like Wally West complaining, hate it. But I grow to like Wally. I like Wally West's Flash. So like
Eventually,
I have,
yeah.
like those conflicting ideologies in terms of like my opinion about him.
Mhm.
Regardless of like the issues that he was in the books. Like,
Yeah.
what was the campfire issues like issue? Wasn't that like
That was an annual, I want to say. Annual number
I think it was an
3?
annual, and I think that's the one I harbored the most like negative attitude towards, just because of the story structure. But this like this revisionist history about like Tara as a character, like
No,
I
fair
rebuke
enough.
all of this. This
Yeah.
issue cannot exist in my mind, and I'd be happy.
I also really have to red flag the sort of final moment of their
Ugh.
conversation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, Gar asks Slade if he had sex with Tara, and the resolution that Marv chooses to go with is for him to say, "Does it matter?" And I want to be like, it matters to Chris Hansen.
Oh god.
I love that you did. You find that before we filmed this? Did you plan that bit?
I looked it up as I was sitting here.
That was great. That was great.
I really wish like you had written it in your notes and your Chris Hansen.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
What kind of answer is, does it matter? Yes, it matters.
Yeah, very much matters. Yes.
If I was in that fucking diner and heard that shit, I'd be like, yes. While I'm eating my damn waffles, it matters.
He doesn't
You
even
took-
go here.
Yeah,
Literally.
you turn around from the booth, sit right behind them, like, I'm sorry, I have something to say to
Yeah,
you
like,
right now.
please,
Yeah.
One moment, Gar. Shut the
Couldn't
fuck
help
up.
it over
This
here.
matters. Literally, garbage.
I also like that they're like openly talking about like death and murder, and there's just the one line of the waitress, like, let me know if you need anything else. Like, it's just like,
I'm a really big fan.
yeah. Oh man.
Are you? I
Yeah.
wouldn't be after that conversation. If I was working, I'd be like, you better have left me a goddamn tip because you guys are garbage.
It's also not like we're probably getting ready to move on, but I want to point out again with Gar at the end of this, like leading into the next issue, he basically just
Reverts back to being Gar.
right. But it's like you were literally about to murder a person in cold blood, and there's clearly a lot of trauma that you are dealing with. But the next time we see him, he's like Jericho, another person he tried to beat the shit out of, sees him, was like, "Hey, buddy, I hope you can forgive me."
At least he had a conversation with them, because he said he was going to have a conversation with the entire team.
Yeah.
And then didn't.
Yeah, we never saw it.
I missed it, because the next time he sees everyone, they're like playing at the pool.
Yeah, we never see. No, because the team comes back and they're like, "Oh, Jericho's back," and then they never address anything.
Never. That issue could be wiped from existence, and I'd be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, nothing. It doesn't move anything forward other than like, oh, we needed a quick and easy way for Gar and Slade to not be at each other's throat every issue.
Right.
And for Gar to not bring it up. And that was their idea. And I'm like, no, this doesn't fly with me. It does not exist to my Terra canon at all whatsoever.
There you go.
There you
go. There's not that much Terra canon. So yeah, you can wipe that out of there.
Not this Terra.
Yeah.
Not this Terra.
Right.
Issue 56. We move on, thankfully. I did have a question to pose to you two. When does Donna Troy lose her magic lasso? Did they say when it happens?
No, they don't say it, at least not in here.
Because she just starts commenting, "Oh, this lasso that I'm using is not magic."
Yeah, it's not magical like Diana's, is what she says,
like, wait a
or something
minute.
like that.
Wait a minute now. It was magic like a volume ago.
It was like a different type. It was like a different type of magic, right? It did different things than Diana's did.
Well, yeah, it always did different things than Diana's.
Right. But now it does nothing except be a piece of rope.
I'm like, what the hell? Where did it go?
I'm not
sure.
Know.
Yeah, they don't say anything about it.
There's so much, like, the last part is just messy to lead up to Crisis on Infinite Earths messy, which is like kind of sad to see, because like I existed reading comic books pre-New 52 into New 52 era, and that transition was also messy. And I thought in my brain, in my like rose-colored, glasses kind of way, that like, back in the day, they handled these transitions so nicely, and like they had a plan. Apparently the fuck not, because I'm very confused.
I was going to ask this later for when like the crisis moment does happen, but since we're talking about it now, I'll ask you now. Is this the last issue of Titan stuff before Crisis? It is, right?
I think so. I think when they do the relaunch is post Crisis on Infinite Earths.
So yeah, then the setup for their involvement with the story is just very much lacking.
It's thinly veiled, especially considering there have been better setups for it in previous volumes.
Right.
Where, like, they'll mention the Monitor or Harbinger, even like if it's just a panel. And I'm like, oh, that's really good. Like George and Marv really had a plan.
And this wasn't the first time we saw Harbinger in the Monitor, was it?
No, this is not the first time. We've seen them.
I didn't think so.
Every volume, I feel like.
Teased in the background, sort of like Dr. Claw.
Yeah. There you go.
Don't do that, because then that makes Harbinger like the pet, and I hate that. No. So issue 56 opens up with Raven, thankfully coming back to Ray, kind of lamenting her position as an emotionless husk to be used by Trigon, and kind of like yelling at her mom into the proverbial nothingness of like why she isn't holding Trigon at bay better, which is too vague to me. I need to know exactly like how Trigon is escaping into Raven and why Azula's not doing more, or Allura. I called her Azula. Oops.
But then that's all we get of her.
And that's all we get.
Yeah, we never see her again.
Well, we get, I think, kind of the first instance of her reversing her empathy in the little battle scene.
She cures all the sick people.
Well, before that, though, when there's some sort of, I guess they're technically Gizmo's henchmen are attacking the lab.
Yeah.
And she's very angry that they, are putting sick people, vulnerable people in danger. And that anger kind of gets out of hand. And she chooses to reverse the pain she's absorbed onto them to teach them a lesson and punish them. And that causes her to go further off the handle. But then she catches herself and she realizes that Trigon is manifesting in her. And then she channels all of that extra power he's given her into healing everyone in the war, is how she finishes out.
Yeah, because it was like not just one person; it was like everybody that was sick.
Yeah.
She healed.
We
which was
we only
interesting.
we only see her heal the little girl, but then there's like, yeah, everybody in the ward is healed now. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
That's honestly the most she's done outside of teleporting in the entire like last couple
Yeah.
volumes because she's
Mm.
been rendered powerless a lot of the time except for like teleporting.
Right.
And I think I remember specifically like a lot of the ways she was fighting while in that like enraged state was really cool and dynamic and different for her. I do want to mention that in the state of New York, there is a Church of Blood cameo because while they are transporting the radiation
Yeah.
cube thing, you see in the background that there's a Church of Blood under construction to be
Oh yeah.
built in the background, which I was like, oh, that is some great foreshadowing and building a character. I like that a lot.
That's cool.
For all of one panel.
Yeah.
The henchmen are successful in capturing the nuclear whatever the fuck. They kind of mention it's a person, but we don't know who it is. Gar picks up Adeline Wilson and Jericho from the airport, gives the most half-hearted apology I've ever heard to Jericho, and bless Jericho's gentle soul heart for accepting the apology, because I would not have been so nice. I would have been a little bit more, pointed in accepting such an apology. We get a cute moment between Sarah and Cyborg as Cyborg is on his way to get the procedure done, where Sarah just comes in with the wise, like, wisdom and like, I just said wise wisdom, but she's amazing. I don't know how to like describe it. She's like,
that was arguably one of my favorite moments in this whole run was that little scene, because it's a really important scene for Cyborg too, to see that, these young kids have similar issues to him, except they don't get to go out there and make a difference in the world in a crime fighting aspect like he does. Yeah. So if these kids can learn to accept their deficiencies, then so can he. And eventually he does at the end of this, which is what I really like. Like his arc is kind of background fodder to what goes on in these last 3 issues, because it's really about the Fearsome Five. But I liked every second of it. I really enjoyed what they were doing with his character.
His side stories end up being such a bright moment for each volume, respectively.
Yeah. He's a great character.
When Sarah was like, when she was like, if you're going to do this, referring to the procedure to turn his like cybernetic exoskeleton into like a polymer plastic,
which is an awful idea. Just to throw that out there. Awful idea.
What is the point? It just seems like a lot of work for not a lot of, like, aesthetically okay, I guess.
Yeah.
And you don't get to be a superhero anymore, but all right. She was like, if you're going to do this, make sure you're doing it for yourself and not for anybody else. And I think she's like low-key referring to herself in that moment. I think
that's what I gathered. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I really liked. Sarah is so great. I love her. I gush. This leads into the return of the Fearsome Five. I say in quotes because there's only 4 of them. It's Shimmer, Simon, Gizmo, and Mammoth, which is your first introduction to the Fearsome Five in comics in terms of this volume. What are your thoughts about them as it stands?
I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier. Like, it's just a team of henchmen all coming together and it doesn't really work. The one that made me laugh was Shimmer, because Shimmer loves to tell people what her powers are. Loves it. Like, it's honestly maybe her favorite thing to do is like every time she used her matter transforming powers, she had to tell you that she was doing it and what she could do. I'm just like, okay, like I get that, like, sometimes in comics people pick up at different times, so sometimes you have to reiterate things. I understand that. This was happening multiple times in an issue, and I just like between that and like, I don't like Mammoth also is a character that I am familiar with from the animated shows, specifically the Teen Titans one from the early 2000s, and Shimmer is not a part of that. So the Mammoth that I see is just this big hulking guy that's crazy strong. And yeah, even in the show, he's a little timid and kind of looks to the others for guidance for what to do. But in this one with Shimmer, that guy will not move if she doesn't tell him which direction to walk in.
Lapdog.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah, I hated it.
I'm very thankful that they get a lot more development as the years go on, because at least from like, I think retrospectively, me and James can conclude that like from a villain perspective, it's so underdeveloped.
Yeah, very much so.
coming into like the conclusion of this run, villains, if you're not Deathstroke or Trigon, I wouldn't even give Trigon a lot of credit in terms of being that developed as a villain. So basically, if you're not Slade or Terra, you're kind of fucked. You have a gimmick, and that's it.
And then what was the Gizmo?
Simon,
Gizmo's one of my least favorite comic characters. I don't find him interesting at all. I just think I don't get it. I don't get
He
the
has a
character.
jetpack.
Yeah, he has a jetpack, and he's an inventor. He has machines and weapons and things like that. It's like, cool. There's thousands of you.
And henchmen out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was weird too. It's like a shitty version of MODOK is all I ever really see with him.
His entire existence could be like in MODOK's mouth.
Pretty much, yeah. But like, yeah, I don't like Gizmo. And then Simon is an interesting character that I think is not done well in these couple of issues.
No, I think again it's a failing of like 80s villains in general.
And then I won't mention the two people that get added yet, because I'm sure we'll touch on them, but it's the same thing with the entirety of the team. It's just for a moment in the comic that was fun, which was the Titans versus the Fearsome Five.
Oh, those fight scenes are great.
Right. I don't have any. There's never a moment the entire time I'm reading that where I'm going to think, oh, something bad is going to happen to the Titans during this. The entire time, like, yeah, they're going to win. It's going to be fine. We just got to get to that point.
Yep, exactly. We do get a mention of who they're actually trying to apprehend. The first mention of Jinx is in this issue. Mm-hmm. They do admit to being the main people trying to get the like radiation infused box thing that has a person in it. Right. That's also them. They do kind of like talk about how much more powerful they are this time around, which doesn't really, I was waiting for them to reveal why. And then they never did, which was strange because I was like, okay, it seems like they're more formidable this time around, but I never got a reason. So I was kind of just left hanging on that note. The bright moment of this issue for James is when Corey kind of like puts Dick Grayson in timeout.
Yeah.
That was funny.
I mean, it's not tactically sound, but I mean, it makes sense for her character. And I just love it in terms of the way he's been sort of nursemaiding her, instructing her, and it gives her a chance to flip that.
The end of it is Cyborg surgery and it being successful.
Right.
Which leads us into issue 57. Before we get into that issue, I want to say like the ABC thing at the beginning of it, where they're like, oh, you can like think of this as like different titles.
For the titles, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, this is
dumb.
Like dumb. I didn't want to say it was just dumb.
Yeah, it was dumb.
Like,
it was dumb. Yeah, you can say
doing here?
you don't have to say it. I'll say it. It's dumb. I read. I was like, what is this? What are we doing? And then you zoom out and you're like, oh, that was stupid. Yeah,
just
what was the
Goosebumps
point?
Choose your own title kind of situation. I'm very
but because it doesn't matter what title I like. The same shit is inside the rest of the book. So who cares? Just pick a title.
We get Cyborg post surgery. The Titans, amidst this battle, have lost because it's just three of them. It's just Corey, Donna, and Nightwing.
And Nightwing gets sidelined for most of it. So
this is where they meet up back with Gar and Jericho. And this is like the most egregious writing is what Gar says. And I don't even want to repeat it. Audience, you don't need to even know it. It is just vastly racially insensitive to two different minority groups. And
yes, I remember this line. Yeah.
My jaw was like,
I couldn't believe I couldn't believe that was written. Like I was like, holy shit. Like this is the 80s and people are still writing this. Oh boy. Okay.
Are you looking for it right now? Did you mentally block it out?
It made me realize there was another yikes moment in the previous issue that I had just wanted to put a little pin in.
Go ahead.
Let me do.
Is it Guard again?
No, it was Simon with Captain Hall, who is the black police captain, and Simon mentions that he is going to give him a necktie party, which living in the South is a reference to lynching and just, I mean, we can say it's a mark of the fact that Simon is a villain and this is how shitty and racist he is, but it did really just kind of make me raise my eyebrows and be like, wow, they got away with that. Okay.
Especially given the idea that like especially in the 80s, comic books were stereotypically meant for kids. Kids should not be reading that. I'm not one to like be all for censorship a lot of the time, but like, what the fuck? What is that? Stop it. Stop. Which has made the next issue even worse because then Gar says his defamatory thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm so glad we're towards the end because I'm running out of energy to stand these people.
The reboot is coming.
Goddamn shit. Stop. Luckily, move the fuck on. We get the introduction of Dr. I underlined it. Dr. Sarah Charles, because Vic tried to like come in with some like almost misogynistic language towards her, and she took none of it, which I liked. That made me immediately like her. Another, like, in retrospect, I'm just thinking of it now. All of the female side characters who are not superheroes, grade A, I love them. I want more of them. Sarah Charles, great addition towards the end of this volume. I hope we get to see more of her. She is training Vic, which took like 5 pages of a training montage to like get him to feel better, which was neat if it was only like 2 pages. It was a lot. Great panel work, I must say, but like doesn't really add a lot to the story other than like, I get it. Vic is training in his new plastic polymer, whatever, exoskeleton you want to call it. After that training montage, that extensive training montage, the Jinx reveal, because they finally figure out a way to release her. I have thoughts about her costume, and we've already talked about like how sad it is that like people of Indian descent are colored the way they are in this comic. But it's cool to see her here. She ends up being yet another iconic Teen Titan villain to the canon.
I think Jinx is a great example. I'll just dive right in of the idea of the woman of color character being treated as sort of voiceless and characterless and as a puppet, because she starts as sort of this MacGuffin for Simon, and there's this hilarious panel of her coming to confused. But then almost immediately he implants knowledge of English into her mind, which I would point to being sort of a psychic colonialism, even in a way. Yeah. And then not too long after that, she's possessed by Jericho, and she spends the rest of the volume not even herself, really. So it's a very unfortunate character introduction. It's not a strong character, really. I mean, you could say she has a strong visual, I guess, but not much personality or agency.
I'd even venture to say like her visuals aren't that well looking, given like the ability to draw like mystical energy at the time, because it isn't that. I mean, we've gotten some of like Zatanna in the previous volumes, and we've gotten some other mystical characters exuding mystical abilities, but like it was vastly underwhelming. Like Jinx is a formidable foe later down the line to the Teen Titans, and she's just like random circles coming out of my hands. And that's it. I can't use my powers if I'm not on the ground. All right. Thanks. Welcome to the Fearsome Five, I guess. We don't get the other reveal. I'll get into that in the next issue about the second villain reveal on who I thought it was. She's revealed. We get a impromptu Titans training montage, which lasts like half a page. I would have rather seen more of that than I would have rather seen Vic training, because the training montages the Teen Titans do are always pretty fun. We've had some great experiences watching the Teen Titans train, and it didn't give me enough. I wanted more, especially like this is the first time most of the team is back together. In that moment, though, we do get again more of Corey's warrior tendencies coming out and her commenting on it. Vic and Clyburn.
Dr. Clyburn is what I had.
Dr. Clyburn, they were captured by the Fearsome Five in order to release Jinx in the first place. And Vic, not being recognized as Cyborg, goes undercover as like her assistant.
Well, is it to release Jinx or to release the other
or is it
person?
Tryon?
The other.
It's to release the other one. Yeah. Who ends up being Neutron. Yeah.
Yeah. Spoilers, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be Plasmus, first of all.
That would have been cool.
I was like really hyped. I'm like, wait a minute. The only person I know who has to be encased in something because they're deadly to the Titans is Plasmus. But alas, I was disappointed when it was Neutron.
Yeah.
A Superman villain.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he kind of sucked in the last issue. He was not a good character.
Even his outfit was lame.
They hyped him up for a decent amount of time. Like basically the two full issues, you're wondering like, who is this person in this case? And once you find out, it's like, oh yeah, I know you lose all the time.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know who the fuck it was. And I know a lot of Superman villains, not to like toot my own nerdy horn or whatever, but like I venture to say I know a lot about Superman than most because a lot of people don't like reading his comics, but like I didn't even know who this fucker was. So the other thing of note at the end of this issue, before we get into the last issue of the volume and of the Marv Wolfman and George Perez run, is that Cyborg's plastic polymer, whatever you want to call it,
right,
is trading because his body isn't taking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Akin to like a kidney transplant going wrong. And that is like the cliffhanger for the next issue, which is the last one. We are here at the like grand finale, if you will.
What a ride it's been.
Yeah, Tron finally being revealed in all his lackluster glory.
Mm-hmm.
The Fearsome Five take on the cops, which was interesting, I guess. We didn't need to see
This
that.
is where the necktie party happens.
It was this issue. Yeah.
This issue.
Yeah. You know, 1-2 punch of back-to-back bullshit comments.
I don't need to see cops and army people fighting villains anymore in comics. And it always ends the same way. You know what? When somebody writes it where like a soldier shoots a villain in the head and kills them, then you can start doing it again. Until that happens, I don't care.
Yeah. Honestly, to see them be effective would be a welcome change because they displace them easily. Like they're done.
It's the same thing every time with the cops too. It's like, hey, fire all your weapons. Nothing happens. Boy, this is not working. The hero shows up. We never see them again.
Yeah,
they're just in the way.
Yeah, which is what these cops are doing until the Teen Titans show up. And I wrote in my notes like they're actually displaying teamwork. Mm-hmm. They make they make good use of their abilities with each other to take out the Fearsome Five. Whether it's Jericho possessing Jinx, whether it's Starfire and Donna Troy taking on Mammoth, or Gizmo, which I think Nightwing took out Gizmo for the last bit was him taking out Gizmo.
Yeah, he took out Gizmo first.
Yes.
Just solo. And Beast Boy was kind of just like rotating around, which was cool. It's just like, oh, this person needs my help. Oh, this person needs my help. And then Jericho was my favorite part of this because I forgot about him that entire fight. Yeah. Until you see like they put the words contact in his color scheme for text. I was like, oh, right. I forgot he was back.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah. And he is the reason they win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is like the third or fourth time that Jericho has literally saved the team from complete and utter loss.
Yeah.
Because he's the MVP. He's like one of the best Teen Titans. Complete stand at this point. I love Jericho. Amidst all of this, Simon is thrust into the ocean where he is like facing death and is teleported to the Monitor's stronghold where him and Harbinger warn him about Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is the tie-in. I think one of like the first tie-ins. James, if you would illuminate me, because I don't remember specifically because I know Infinity Gauntlet is written by George Perez and Marv Wolfman, right?
Yes.
Or written / drawn by George Perez and Marv Wolfman. If that happens before this, or if they did Dark Phoenix, did they do Dark Phoenix Saga before this?
Written by Jim Starlin, but with art by George Perez, 1991. So after this.
I'm trying to think if this is like one of the first it is one of the first major crossover events, right?
Yeah. And also
I didn't want to make that statement and then some nerd in the comments be like, actually, you know.
The first Universal retcon, I believe, as well, of a publisher being like, you know what, we need to reboot this continuity.
You know how that goes.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
So this is our first introduction into that storyline, which James and I will be covering as its own episode in the near future, with a focus on the Teen Titans characters, because that first reboot storyline that is a massive, like I think it's 5 issues or 6 issues. A lot of stuff happens to a lot of Teen Titans, and they deserve to be talked about. The power struggle amongst the Fearsome Five that me and James know so well, because they can't get along for shit, and this is the first time it's showing up. happens in this issue, which is, again, another reason the downfall happens. Neutron tries to be like, oh, I'm leading this team now. And myself, like the rest of the Fearsome Five, are like, well, who the fuck are you? Like, why? Why are you here? Why did Simon want you that bad in the first place, is what I'm asking. I have that Jinx is controlled by Jericho, and that is like what we said before.
And he just jumps. He jumps from Jinx, then to Gizmo, then Gizmo to Shimmer, and Shimmer's just the last one standing because the rest of the team takes everybody out, and he just is still controlling her as they surrender, which was cool.
Yeah. Then it moves on to Vic in the hospital, finally a cyborg again.
Yep.
You know, confessing to the team that this was the procedure he was undergoing.
Yeah.
And
because we never said that he never told anybody that he was doing that.
Yeah, he never told anyone that he was undergoing this procedure except for his grandparents and Sarah.
Nobody on the team knew.
No. Which, like, why wouldn't you tell them? What?
He probably figured they would try and talk him out of it, and he just didn't want to have the conversation.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
The team needs to be worked on.
But this is the part that I was referring to earlier, where he has like that big growth moment as a character. Like he finally accepts his appearance.
Yeah, which will be cool going forward.
I thought it was sort of weird because usually with the tropes, when the hero, gives up their power to be normal, it ends up being a reversal at the end. They choose to give it back. And Vic actually doesn't have that experience. He doesn't sacrifice. He simply loses the option. And I thought that was sort of narratively unsatisfying, but also kind of more realistic, I guess. We don't always get to choose, especially in terms of things like appearance and ability. And so maybe it hits a truer chord in that regard, I guess.
I took it as like, it wasn't meant to be. That was my thing of like, oh, you went through this change and it wasn't going to happen. This is just, you're beating a dead horse at this point because you just weren't meant to have that part of your life back anymore. That's what I took it as. But I see your point. Like a lot of the times it would have been more apropos if he like chose to sacrifice it himself, which is the end.
Nope. There's one more epilogue.
I forget that. Welcome, Ryan, to the many epilogues of the Teen Titans comic books where not just one happened, two, sometimes three happen.
This was a good one, though. This one was good.
Yeah, where Jericho is officially inducted into the team. Finally. We've spent like 2.5 volumes with him, or 2 volumes now at this point. They should have made that happen sooner, I feel, but I'm glad he's here, and he has like his own poster that Beast Boy made. I'm gonna probably take that as another like symbolism of I'm sorry.
Right on time for the run to end. He joins the team.
Yeah. Okay, don't do it.
What? I didn't write it.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out the facts.
Whew, we are at the very end. This is the close of the George Perez and Marv Wolfman run. There's not much left to do except for our annual Sheikah Week. Ryan, I know you've watched episodes in the past, but this is where we critique the fashion in the 80s comic books.
Yeah, definitely my strong suit of the show, for sure.
Whether it's costume changes, character introductions, or just in this point, themed outfits like the bridal party.
Can I actually make probably my one contribution to this?
Yeah.
Did you notice that there was a panel in that last issue where Dick Grayson's costume was green?
Yeah, the coloring was off.
It's like, wait a minute, hold on, what happened here?
I'll edit it into the episode. I was like
it wasn't like, it was just full on green, except for the collar. The collar was still blue and the mask was still the same color, but everything else was green. I was just like, that okay, sure.
I'm going to edit it in, obviously.
Yeah, no, I remember it. I remember it stuck out very deeply for me. I was like, that is very strange, but okay. I just wanted to get that stupid one out of the way before you guys really got into it.
Where is it here?
It's when it's when he's fighting Gizmo. Yeah, it's just full on green.
Full on green.
Yeah. like, what the hell? Like, what is that? I know that happens from time to time in comics.
There's a lot of like bleeding happening in this volume
Yeah.
too, of like just the color being not what it is anymore, just because that's like how time works.
Yeah, that one looked like they purposely made it green. Like that's why it surprised me. I was like, oh, okay, sure.
We're gonna start with the good characters. I think we're gonna have different opinions about Lilith, so she will be first up. I'm probably gonna edit like 2 or 3 of her outfits here. So try to talk about it as a collective, because she doesn't have a costume yet, and she sports multiple looks throughout each of the issues she's in.
She only wears casual attire, and she just changed look a little bit. I think the thing that really stood out to me was her hair, because it doesn't seem like 80s hair to me. It has that very long, straight, more 60s, 70s vibe, I would say. And it made me think, especially with the sunglasses in this panel, I was wondering if she was supposed to maybe reference Gloria Steinem at
That's
all.
what I thought. I was gonna say it.
I was like, but so I don't know. I'd say chic, especially if, like you said, if we consider it from the eye of the 80s, the lens of an 80s viewer, then yeah, she's stylish, I think, unless her hair isn't permed enough. Maybe I'm not understanding the 80s correctly in that regard. But
hey, you gave it a chic. I was not expecting that. I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised even.
She's dressed like a woman in the 80s. That's pretty much it. Yeah. There's really nothing else to it. I know like the bridal party stuff can all really just be its own topic with how they're all dressed that way. But yeah, there's nothing really standoutish from her look at all. It's hard because she's not in a costume, which makes it, I guess, harder because there's multiple different outfits she's wearing. But in terms of like style, like I wasn't there in the 80s, but I'd imagine that's what the style looked like. So props to her. Great fits all around.
Okay, moving on to so I put the nameless character here because as it stands, Golden Wing Boy doesn't have a name yet. I'll edit in the picture. I don't want to say his name because it is a spoiler for the next volume. Serious winged man who is George Perez's excuse to draw somebody half naked this volume. It happens, Ryan. George Perez finds a way to draw somebody half naked, usually a man.
I mean, there's literally a part in this where like Starfire just pops out of like a hot tub or whatever and doesn't have anything on, and Nightwing has to cover up with a towel. So yeah,
he likes drawing naked folk.
Yeah,
he did the same thing with Gar and Tula at the wedding because they were in the pool.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah,
80s wild time. What are your thoughts on Golden Winged Boy? I can't say his name.
He looks so like he just looks weird. Like he's got like a weird curly perm for his hair too, which makes it look even weirder. Like I'll be straight with you. I don't know who this is. Like I have no idea who the person is, so I don't have any other reference points to go off of. But in terms of just who this mystery winged character is, it just looks weird. Like I don't know. There's like another character. There's really like there's nothing to him in this run, and he just has the one look here. It's not really a costume. It's just what he looks like.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Like when he first pops out of like the ice or whatever, I thought he was like gold, like because like the lighting made him look gold, and I was like, oh, okay, like I really don't know. And then you see him again next to just a guy with wings. So yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, nothing really stand out.
What do you think?
Rocky Horror vibes from the Gold Loincloth?
Yeah, for sure.
But I guess I'll say weak. He's a lame angel guy who makes no sense. I don't know.
The only thing that I can spoil, and I'm not gonna say his name. Obviously, you guys can go to Google if you want, but I'm not gonna say it for the people viewing who want to like not be told. That's his only costume of his existence.
Really?
And based off of that knowledge alone, for me, it's a week. There are better ways for George Perez to draw naked people that aren't this. It's a weird like Catholicism cherub vibes. I don't know.
No, we don't need any of that.
Yeah, no. It's a week for me as well. And then last on the good side of things is the bridal party. Once again, shout out to the dress designer. I think her name was Carol Flynn, before I go and misquote it. Carol Flynn. We've had some time to ruminate on our idea of 80s fashion and what it means to be a bridesmaid in the 80s. James, what is your final verdict for these looks?
I mean, like from the lens of the 80s, I would say these would have been considered like the height of fashion. I may not like them now myself, but I mean, there's a lot of detail. Some of the 80s things include long puffed sleeves and high necklines, neither of which I agree with. I find the use of color a little frustrating, especially in that I feel like it's very sort of binary. Pink is for girls, blue is for boys. But again, from the standards of the 80s were all about pink is for girls and blue is for boys. And they fucking loved a puff sleeve. And so this is high fashion. This is where it's at. I have to call it chic.
Ryan, any other, what is your final verdict even?
I'm actually gonna I'm pulling up the looks right now. If
you can fully disagree, it's fine.
No, I don't disagree. I think for the time, that's probably like a really good look. And of course, like we talked briefly about like Gar's neon suit back when we were on this issue. Yeah. This is very much in line with this, like very vibrant popping colors. And you don't want like plain colors in a comic anyway, because they're not going to stand out. Yeah. But if I'm speaking like in terms of like, let's say like in the modern day, if your friend was getting married and this was the dress she picked out for you,
so mad.
Yeah, you just be furious the whole time. Like it's really like James, but the neck part is the part that looks really weird. Like you can get past the color scheme if you have to. And even the sleeves, a lot of dresses will do that with sleeves now too. But the neck thing is weird. Like going
it's some
like
weird,
right
like
up,
Victorian ode to like 1800s. I'm pulling random references out of my ass. I don't know.
I think Wallace may have had that neckline in her dress somewhere.
I almost want to ask my mom. I want to show her the picture and like be like, Mom, what do you think of these dresses? Like when you were in the 80s, was this it? Was this giving what it needed to give? I have questions. But for me, again, like James said, I have to think of it as the like lens of the 80s.
Yeah.
There's a more that I like about them than there's more that I don't like, which is just, I think, like you said, Ryan, that neckline is just atrocious.
Yeah, it's bad.
And we did also talk about like the color limitations. Maybe Carol Flynn meant a different color scheme that they couldn't have the technology to put into the book itself. So I'm going to give them also that benefit of the doubt. Yeah. And I think it's really neat that they actually got a dress designer. Yeah, that's going to be the biggest point for me is they got a dress designer to design these damn dresses. So on that alone, I think it's a unanimous chic across the board, which gives us to the villains of the volume. The only two, which is Jinx and Neutron. James, I know you had reserved some comments about Jinx's outfit prior to this. Go ahead.
I think the word is Orientalism, really, because George loves the quote exotic, especially in this time period. He did very similar things to Scarlet Witch and her quote gypsy Romani costume. So that would be my main thing. Like, I don't feel research into the costumes of India went into this. There's no references to saris or anything. I'm not sure necessarily where the horns come from. Is that a reference to the sacred cow aspect? But counterpoint, like visually, I think it's just a cool costume to look at. I could see a cosplayer doing it. Like, could Demanda put together a Jinx? If we're gonna, always got to bring up Demanda.
We do. The Demanda cosplay for me was gonna go to Adeline, but you know, I see Jinx. I could see it.
Like, what was the Tomb of Horror, Temple of Doom? It is a 100% Temple of Doom costume.
I see that. And, yes. So it's a chic then for you?
Mixed bag. I can't call it one or the other. I guess visually yes, culturally no.
Of all of the outfits to like have a middling kind of opinion on, that's fine. I don't know what word that would be. I don't know what word that is synonymous with average that rhymes with chic and weak.
Meek.
My brain doesn't have the, what was it?
Meek.
Meek, yes. I'm gonna have to edit Meek into the episode now. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Is this her look? Like, how long is this her look for as a character?
I would say she gets tiny alterations until like the early 2000s, where she gets not a complete revamp, but I think a more, as James had said earlier, a little bit more culturally sensitive.
Right. Okay.
Outfit.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I think this one is just problematic's probably not the right word, but you kind of get where I'm getting. It's very similar to what James was talking about. Like, it's just, it's not really an outfit, because it's just like, it's almost like they just threw her in it's like, what would someone from India wear? It's like, put her in that. There's nothing comic related to it. It's just like,
or even related to her code name, or related to
there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing to it. When she first showed up, I was like, that's what she looks like. Like when she's first introduced, like I was shocked by that. I thought it was, I don't know if I want to say it was insensitive. I guess maybe I'm sure some people definitely feel that way.
Probably.
But I didn't care for it. Definitely didn't care for that look.
I venture to agree with James, almost to the T. I think it is a cool costume in theory, but then in practice, you think about the context and it really doesn't fly. I'm also going to have to, I think I'm just going to go further to give it a full-on week. Her outfit, while it does change, this is a moment where like, I really want people from that culture to like really give her a cool redesign. I'd love to see somebody update Jinx for a modern day and see what comes up, because
I just think I don't want to step in this too much because it's a delicate topic. But like, what if it was a character that was their origins were from Japan, and when they woke them up, they were wearing a samurai outfit? Like, it's I think
it's funny you bring that up, because we had the similar sentiments about Katana from The Outsiders.
Yeah.
Who made her debut a couple volumes ago for us, at least to the Teen Titans books.
Right.
And other characters like Cheshire, we had mixed feelings about too. It's a lot of these characters that are from other, like, just talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody, please.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard. Go to a university, any.
Yeah.
I guess that is the main challenge, though. Like, there was no Google is a big difference.
Yeah.
In our
of course. Yeah.
Like,
it's hard. But moving on, last and probably least is Neutron in his like monochromatic gold look. There it is in all its meh glory.
It's just weak. It's boring. I guess it sort of references a hazmat suit in terms of like some sort of context.
Oh, I didn't even get. Didn't even get.
I hate it.
I'm thinking of the hazmat people from Monsters Inc. It's a week for me. I'm gonna have to call it. Ryan, do you share the similar sentiments? Is this a unanimous week across the board?
Neutron is so stupid, man. That's such a stupid character. I always thought that I thought he wore the hazmat suit to like stop himself from like exploding and things like that. And then in this, you see it, and it's like he uses it basically as a conduit for his powers. And it's like, that is just so dumb. Like, I didn't like anything about it. It's a horrible costume, not a good character.
I don't even think he stays in the Fearsome Five for that long. But that is it. That brings us to the like grand finale of the Marv Wolfman and George Perez run. The crossover with the House of X podcast, the people over there brought up the wonderful opportunity to cover the Teen Titans and X-Men crossover comic book from around the same time. So that'll be interesting to go over and record. You can look forward to that. James, where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram as GeekyJP, and you can also find me on Twitter at Proletary Thought.
I'm always gonna not pronounce that right. And where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm just gonna plug some of the projects that I'm working on. Joe mentioned it earlier. I'm on a show called the I'd Like a Refund podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter at RefundPod. Our Instagram always has different things going on. We got a ton of fun episodes coming out. We did some Halloween themed ones recently. We did one about Muppets Haunted Mansion that just came out today, actually. What's today? The 18th that we're recording. It came out on this Monday. We did one about Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. We do everything film related, but our main show, like Joe mentioned, was movies that really just don't get talked about enough because people forget them generally because of how terrible they were, for whether it was financially or critically or just public eye. So come check us out anywhere you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you can find us there. Yeah, and I'm on Instagram as well at the Rye Guy 16. If you watch TV, sometimes you'll see me on there from time to time. So yeah, that's all I got. That's me.
There you go. And then you can find me as always at Instagram at Joe Pry Cosplay, Twitter at Joe Pry Cosplay. You can find our TeePublic page hosted by me, Joe Pride Art, where I designed our Titans Together t-shirts. Again, awkward standing where you have to fucking see it.
There you go.
You can find our shared Instagram, Titans Together Pod. We post almost irregularly. I'm in the middle of drawing every single day for the month of October, which has presented some challenges to posting every single day or posting on other pages that aren't my main art page. But yeah, and with that, I bid you guys bye. Until next time.
Have a great night. Bye, everyone.